All right, today we are beginning in Unit 1 in the Purple Book. It's Cause and Effect Writing 1, so there are a few chapters about cause and effect writing. This chapter is about sentence structure, common patterns with nouns that show cause, and the topic is the environment and you. This is from Grammar and Beyond, Book 4. All right, the introduction to the grammar presentation is about sentence structure, simple and compound sentences. Now this goes along with the conjunctions video that we already watched. That was to review some conjunction rules in level 1, or from level 1 and level 2 grammar. And this one is going to look at it a little bit more in depth and with some more academic examples. So if we look at the beginning, it says, in cause and effect writing, in academic writing in general, it is effective to use a variety of sentence types. Writers use simple sentences to extract their opinions strongly. They use compound sentences to link related ideas such as causes and effects. Let's take a look at the example. The example here is a simple sentence. It says, lack of natural resources is one of the results of large ecological footprints. So here we can see it's a simple sentence. It has lack of natural resources as the subject, is as the verb, and then we've got our whole predicate here, the thing that comes after the verb. And this is just a basic sentence. It only has one subject and verb. It sounds like it has a pretty strong fact or a pretty strong opinion. A compound sentence is something like large ecological footprints cause many problems, and it is our social responsibility to solve them. So here we can see the conjunction that we have already reviewed with the comma before it. Why do we need a comma before this conjunction? Because there is a subject and verb after it. We reviewed that in our other video. But here we can see some very academic, high academic level sentences that are being combined here to show two related ideas. All right, simple sentences. A simple sentence has only one clause. A clause is a subject and verb. It's called the main clause or an independent clause. Like all sentences, a simple sentence must have a subject and a verb. All clauses have subject and verbs. So in this one, a great deal of waste is thrown into the rivers and streams daily. We can see a great deal of waste. A great deal means like a large amount. So it's like saying a lot of. It's another way to say a lot of, and we will go over this when we go over quantifiers. Those things like much, many, few. This is another type of quantifier. A great deal of waste or trash is thrown, this is our passive grammar, into rivers and streams daily. So someone throws the waste. The waste is thrown. All right. Many different elements may come after the verb, including an object. For example, pollution has devastated many rivers. What has pollution devastated? The rivers. So this is the object of the verb devastated. It's the thing that receives that action, devastate. You could have a prepositional phrase, for example, ozone and other greenhouse gases are often in the news. Are is our verb. And then we've got often, that's our time phrase. And then in the news is our prepositional phrase. I think we saw another example about that in one of our other videos. You could have an adjective after the verb. The earth is becoming warmer. The earth is warm. The earth is becoming warmer. So we've got an adjective here. You could have an adverb after the verb. So natural resources that provide energy will run out eventually. Run out is a phrasal verb. That's our verb. Both words are part of the verb. Will run out is our whole verb because we've got the future and then the verb. And then this whole thing, natural resources that provide energy, this whole thing is our subject before will. So we've got one subject, one verb, even though it has two words in it, but this whole thing is functioning as our verb. And after that, we've got a time adverb. All right, part B, the subject of a sentence must be a noun phrase. There are many different kinds of noun phrases. So the first part we were looking at what comes after the verb and the different options that we have. In the second part, we're looking at what can be before the verb in the subject. You could have an adjective plus noun, like small changes. So you must have at least a noun. It must be a noun. You have to have a noun in there somewhere. But you can have different things with your noun. You can have small changes, and changes is our noun, but you know, what kind of changes? Oh, small changes. You could have a pronoun that takes the place of a noun, so this. And in this case, you can't just walk into a room and say, this has devastated rivers. Everyone will say what? But this is referring to something that you have already mentioned. So if you've already mentioned a situation, we don't usually use the word that. We usually use the word this when we are referring to a situation that we have already mentioned. Noun and noun, you could say like ozone and greenhouse gases. Ozone and gases are often in the news. So you can have, you know, my brother and I went to the store. Jamie and Otis went to the park. You can have two things in your subject, but they both must be nouns. You can have a noun plus a prepositional phrase. The health of our oceans remains critical. Of our oceans is a prepositional phrase to describe health. The health remains critical. Well, what health? The health of our oceans. You can have a noun plus a relative clause. This is also called an adjective clause. It's the same thing. It's just a different name for it. Natural resources that provide energy. And in this case, this is our adjective clause describing natural resources. And we study adjective clauses in level 2. So if we need some review on that, we can do that. Or you can have a gerund. That's the ing form. It looks like a verb, but it doesn't mean progressive. It just means noun. It's working like a noun. Reducing our ecological footprints is critical. Reducing is critical, is our actual subject and verb, and then this is the object of reducing. Reducing what? Reducing ecological footprints, but this is not actually a verb here. It's working as a noun for this verb, is. If we move on to 2.1 on the next page, the verb of a sentence can consist of a single main verb or a main verb with an auxiliary verb, such as be, do, and have, or a modal such as can and will. A verb phrase can consist of more than one verb. So what this is showing us is now we're focusing on the verb itself. So the first part we were looking at what comes after the verb. The next part we were looking at what comes before the verb. And this part we're looking at the verb itself. The verb can be just a verb, like remains in the present tense. It can be in any time. You could have an auxiliary verb like has devastated. In this case, the verb is actually has devastated. Devastated is the main verb, and this is a helping verb, or auxiliary verb is the fancy grammar name for it. A helping verb, and then this is our information verb. It gives us the information. This one, what grammar tense is this? Present, because of has. Perfect, because we've got our verb 3 ed. Present perfect is the verb. This is our information verb, and this is our helping verb, our grammar verb. You can also have modals, something like may take. Take is our information verb, and may is our modal. It tells us about certainty. It's kind of like might. The average temperature rises and falls. So you can have two verbs, as we can see in this little rule right here. So rises and falls. Both of these verbs have S because they're related to the subject temperature. So you can have two verbs if you want to show two actions. 2.2, using simple sentences. Using short, simple sentences emphasize an important point within a larger discourse, which means like discussion or paragraph or anything where you have more than one idea. For example, the consequences of these footprints can be disastrous. You feel how strong that is? It's really making a strong point. So when you use a simple sentence, it makes your point feel pretty strong. It's easy to find and it's not connected to anything else, so it's pretty clear. If the subject or a verb is missing, the sentence is incomplete. We call that a fragment. And this is really important because this is something that I see from a lot of students' fragments. Can you see this? I hope it's not too shiny. I see this from a lot of students. So if I see a fragment, I usually write frag. Frag for fragment. Fragment. A fragment means it's either missing a subject or it's missing a verb. It's incomplete. Or it could be just missing both, or part of a subject or part of a verb, but it means it's an incomplete sentence, and usually the problem is the subject and verb. So let's look at this fragment example first, and I'm going to take this, I'm going to tip this just a little bit. In the future will probably be much warmer on Earth. This is a fragment. Why? What's missing here? If you read it, when I read it, I immediately can tell that there is a subject missing here before will, because in the future, will probably. What will probably be much warmer on Earth? We don't know. For example, one correction could be the temperature will be much warmer. You could also put it, and then we can guess that you mean the temperature, or that Earth itself will be warmer. If we look at the next example, the worst effect of the large ecological footprints on the loss of natural resources. Yeah, that's a fragment. It's not a finished idea. So if we look down at the correction, the worst effect of large ecological footprints is the loss of natural resources. So many students forget this be verb. But it's actually very important because we've got our subject, the worst effect is. The worst effect is. And that's why this is a singular is, even though it's next to the word footprints, because it's not footprints are. We've got the effect is. And then we've got an adjective before effect. What effect? Oh, the worst effect. Well, the worst effect of what? Oh, the worst effect of large ecological footprints. So this whole thing right here is our subject before our verb. And so our verb, this is the main noun within our subject, and so our verb needs to match the noun, the subject. All right, academic writers connect independent clauses with transition words. Transition words are words like as a result, consequently, furthermore, and however. Transition words begin a sentence, or they can be after a semicolon. This semicolon is a correct use of a semicolon, but even native speakers often struggle with correct use of a semicolon, so I usually tell students to just use the period. These gases trap heat in the air. Period. Space. Capital letter. As a result, comma, space. The earth gets warmer. So here we are connecting these two ideas. These gases trap heat, the earth gets warmer, and we're using this phrase that shows the result of this action. It's showing cause and effect. And then the focus here in this part is the punctuation. It says you can use a period or a semicolon. Use a comma after the transition word or transition phrase in this case. It's not just one word, it's 3 words. But you must have this comma. You must have a period before or a semicolon before with a space. If it's a semicolon, you do not use a capital letter. But this is the way that I prefer students to use. It's the most common. It's the easiest. I don't want to make you memorize multiple rules, so just try that one. Part D. You can connect 2 independent clauses with a semicolon. This is a good choice if the ideas in the 2 clauses are closely related. Semicolon. Again, many even native speakers really struggle to use semicolons correctly, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. It's an option if you want to do it, but if you use a semicolon, you must use it correctly. Compound sentences. This is the part that we reviewed in our conjunctions video. And again, we're just looking at some more academic examples. Use compound sentences to connect 2 ideas. A compound sentence includes at least 2 independent clauses that are connected by a coordinating conjunction, and, but, or, so, yet. We also know that for can be used. And what's the other one? fanboys. Nor can also be a conjunction. When you have your subject verb, some people are concerned. That's one clause. So they recycle. They recycle is another clause. It's another subject verb. So we must have a comma before the so. Must. Avoid run-on sentences and comma splices. A run-on sentence is two independent clauses without a coordinating conjunction or a period. Let's take a look. Run-on sentence example. These gases trap heat in the air, the earth gets warmer. You see, it's even difficult for me to read it because it's hard to see what's happening here. These gases trap heat in the air, the earth gets warmer. You either need, we've got the earth gets warmer. This is a new subject and verb, so we need a period here. These gases trap heat in the air, period, capital T, the earth gets warmer. Or if you want to make it more advanced level, not just basic level writing, we could make it sound more fluid, easier to read if we connect these sentences. These gases trap heat in the air, comma, so the earth gets warmer. And we need this comma before the so because we've got subject and verb. We've got a subject and verb after the so. Therefore, we must have a comma. A comma splice is two independent clauses combined with a comma. Use a period between two independent clauses. So sometimes students get confused about which one is a comma and which one is a period and which one to use where. If you have a new subject and verb, but maybe you do not have your conjunction word, then it must be a comma. You cannot use a comma between two different subject verbs. It's incorrect. So just for memory's sake, this is incorrect because you have a new subject and verb, so this one is actually incorrect. It's called a comma splice. It means you have a comma where you should have a period. Let's take a look at the correction. Humans are the cause of many environmental problems. It is our responsibility to resolve them. So we have a new subject and verb here. Instead of the comma, we're going to put a period, and that is the correct way to do it. The last thing, this is a really important note. It says the use of and but to introduce a sentence is common in some types of writing, such as newspapers and magazines. However, it is not appropriate in academic writing. It is not appropriate in academic writing. So in your book, I'd like you to make a little star here, and I want you to take this part and I want you to cross it out so that you remember that this is inappropriate for academic writing. In your book, I want to see in class that you put a star here, and even if you do it in pencil so you can erase it, I want you to cross this out to help you remember that this is not correct for your academic English classes. It's not correct for your writing class. It's also not correct for your grammar class or any other class in the academic English program. All right, exercise 2.1. I'd like you to do that and bring that to class finished. It says, read about energy resources in Iceland, underline the subject, circle the verb in each independent clause. So if we look at number 1, we've got subject, verb, we've got our conjunction, so it's connected